Child, I got another update for you. Hold on, because it's going to get wild. So it says breaking Trump live from the Oval Office sets a new 2 week deadline for Iran to make a deal, warning the situation won't be pleasant if Iran does not agree by April 27th. Guys, how many 2 weeks do we need? I don't see them agreeing. I just see this escalating. As you can see, it has been laid out pretty clearly, and right now, a lot of people in the US aren't paying attention because they haven't really felt what is about to come. But it's what we've been talking about since the beginning, where the world economies are about to completely collapse. Some have already started to collapse. But the US, that when the US starts to feel it, guys, just you need to be dialed in. You need to be making sure that you are paying attention because um, that is where you're going to see people rushing out to go get everything at the stores. They're going to be rushing to get toilet paper, which I didn't know the country's largest toilet paper manufacturer was blown up last week. As well as remember the egg manufacturer. They're purposely hitting infrastructure. People are purposely setting fires or doing things, even here in this country. It's been going on for quite some time, even oil refineries. Guys, they're doing it on purpose to usher in the new world order. Look at this, Robert Pape. And actually, I'll show you who he is before we get into it. He is a professor of political science at the University of Chicago, specializing in security affairs. Founding director of Chicago Project on Security and Threats. But let's go back to this. So he says within 10 days, parts of the global economy will start running short of critical goods. After 30 years studying economic sanctions and blockades, I don't say this lightly. Not just higher prices, shortages. Markets are not ready for this. And then he continues everyone is still talking about oil prices. That's already outdated. This is no longer a price shock, it is the early stage of a system wide supply shock. Here's the mechanism: price spike, physical shortage, economic contraction. We are now crossing into step two. That's when things break. 20% of global oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. That flow is now constrained by Iran and the US. And it's not just oil, it's the base layer of modern production, fuel, fertilizer, plastics, and much, much more. Once inventories run down, this stops being about expensive inputs. It becomes about missing inputs. Factories don't slow because costs rise, they stop because materials don't arrive. We've seen the smaller version of this. In 1973, there was a 7% supply disruption, then shortages, rationing, industrial decline in under 90 days. Today's shock is larger, guys. It's much larger. The system is tighter. We are at day 45. The sequence from here is predictable. Asia first, which we've already seen this in Asia. Europe next. The UK received last week their last shipment of fuel. Um, fuel. Guys, I can't even think of it. Jet fuel, right? So they got their last shipment of jet fuel, and then there's no more that's going to be coming. So that's what I said. People are planning all their summers. They're going to be traveling, going to be doing that. I hope you aren't going to Asia. I hope you aren't going to Europe or most of the places in the world because it's going to be a mess if you try to get there. And then the rising cost of plane tickets and the shortage of fuel that's here, guys. It hasn't hit the fever pitch, but like he said, we're going to start really, really feeling it in 10 days. So Europe next and then global compression, not collapse, contraction. The US won't be spared. Energy independence doesn't protect a global integrated economy. When supply chains seize, the shock transmits via trade reductions. This is the real shift. Prices no longer determine outcomes, access does. And once that flips, governments start choosing winners and losers. Watch one thing this week: ships through Hormuz, not statements, not markets. If flows don't recover, the system tightens further necessarily. And then also the Houthis are hitting the other passageway. They're blocking the other one, which we said that was going to happen because they are proxies or allies with Iran. And so any anything coming out of the Middle East, it has been completely stopped and blocked. And yes, we don't get most of our oil from the Middle East, but we depend on the global economy around it. All right. By the time um by the time the shortages show up in headlines, it's already too late. That's how these shocks work. Full breakdown, mechanism, timeline, and what happens next. New analysis is on his Substack, Escalation Trap Substack. Maybe we'll read that later to go through it. But then this person is saying, I'm trying to warn all the conservatives, but the truth is, conservative or leftist, few people understand economics, supply chains, logistics, or even basic concepts like where things come from. There are some hard lessons ahead for those who lack knowledge. But it continues. It says oil tanker bound for China reportedly forced to turn around due to the U.S. naval blockade per ship tracking data. Now, this is where we need to be looking at, like I said in the last video, because China is not about that. They are not about that life. They are not playing around. And I'll get to that in a second. But I want to show you what Abbas Aragagici, I can never say these names, what he had to say. He was there. It's this guy, if you've seen him before, right? Who was there at the talks for this negotiation that we knew was never going to go through. So he has formally tweeted about it. He says that everything was going fine. Last night, I was live until late. Everything was going fine. JD Vance, who is the vice president of America, was negotiating with the rest of the negotiation team. During this time, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner suddenly barged into the middle of the conversation, even though they were not present in that room. It is being said that they entered in the middle of the talks and brought a message from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. I brought you how Netanyahu says that he's been kept update with everyone in administration, and he talked to JD Vance. Now, he said afterwards, but there's some discrepancies I want to show you. Um, our Gachi himself has stated that during the negotiations, JD Vance receives a call from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and after that, the talks fail. Now you can understand how Israel's influence dominates American diplomacy and its official foreign policy. Well, this directly impacts Israel. They were very upset about the ceasefire initial agreement and with Lebanon, and then Netanyahu, while the ceasefire talks were going on, that he was like, no, this is not stopping. Like, we are going to continue to pursue this war with Iran. Now, here's another take. The story of why the Islamabad talks collapsed just changed completely. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a near deal that fell apart in the final hours, and the Iranians didn't even know it was over until Vance walked to a podium and told the world. Here's what actually happened behind closed doors. The U.S. reportedly proposed a 20-year moratorium on uranium enrichment. Iran encountered with a single-digit number of years. They didn't talk past each other. The two sides, that's just two sides negotiated. You don't counter with a number if you're not trying to find one. Iran also agreed in principle to a monitored downblending process for its highly enriched uranium stockpile rather than flat out removal. That's a meaningful concession. The U.S. wanted the material physically taken out of the country. Iran said it would destroy it in place under supervision. Those are bridgeable positions. By Sunday morning, the Iranian delegation believed they were close to an initial agreement. Then Vance held a press conference, blamed Iran for the failure, and announced the U.S. delegation was leaving and boarded Air Force Two. The Iranians, by multiple accounts, were blindsided. One source put it plainly, they were pissed off. If true, this reframes everything that happened after. The blockade announcement, the threats about desalination plants, the IDF readiness leaks, all of it lands differently if the talks were closer than anyone admitted publicly. Now, Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are working simultaneously to bridge the remaining gap before the ceasefire expires on April 21st. The Egyptian foreign minister is flying to Washington this week to meet Rubio directly. Turkey's foreign minister is also talking to both sides and floating a 45 to 60-day ceasefire extension to keep the negotiating window open. The Turkish foreign minister said something that cuts to the heart of it. If the nuclear issue becomes all or nothing on enrichment specifically, the talks hit a wall. 9 days left on the clock. So yeah, Yeah, like I told you, that was not going to go through. The powers that be just do not want it to, guys. They're purposely hitting energy infrastructure. This is what's going on. They want the B system to rise, and you have to raise your consciousness, not just see it on the base level of things that are being put out, but the overall thing that is going on, right? So just in, Iranian parliament speaker says to us, the US, enjoy the current gas prices. Soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 and $5 gas. Child. And I reported somewhat on what China had to say earlier, but the China defense minister warns the United States, and this is where we're getting into World War III territory. Any American provocations against Chinese vessels in the Strait of Hormuz will be considered a red line crossing, and we will respond with the harshest possible military options. China will not allow its ships' security or the safety of its navigation to be threatened, and full responsibility for any escalation lies with Washington. Uh-huh. Yep, that's what they want. Now, this came out, which is crazy. Now, I don't know, maybe this was before the 10 o'clock, because 10 o'clock is when our Navy went out there to do their blockade. That was the deadline. But before that, 15 to 20 Chinese, Pakistani, Russian, and Iranian vessels recently passed through the Strait of Hormuz via an IRGC controlled corridor after paying tolls. But now the U.S. Navy is out there saying that they're going to block it. I don't know how it's such a huge stretch of water. We have to see what comes out. And if they try to hit or blow up a Chinese ship. All right, and this is another breakdown I just want to read. It says this started as US versus Iran. Now it's slowly turning into a US versus China situation. Remember, we've been talking about this since the beginning. And that's where things get risky. Follow the oil and it makes sense. China depends on Hormuz for 40% of its oil and 30% of LNG, so it's not sitting back. They've already sent warships from, I can't pronounce it, parked destroyers near Oman, did drills with Iran and Russia, and are now openly saying their ships move freely there. At the same time, cargo planes are reportedly landing in Tehran during the ceasefire, third one already. Iran is giving China friendly access to Hormuz. China keeps buying its oil, and there's growing talks of weapons and dual use tech moving through back channels. Now, here's where it gets tense. The U.S. blockade targets ships going in and out of Iranian ports, but China is basically saying its ships are off limits. That puts Chinese tankers and U.S. Navy inspections on a direct collision path. And it doesn't even take much. One boarding, one standoff, one ship stopped, and things escalate fast. This isn't just about Iran anymore. China has ships in the region, surveillance watching everything, and an economy that can't function without Gulf oil. So every move against Iran hits China too, and every Chinese move raises the stakes. Iran knows exactly what it's doing here. The more China gets involved, the harder it becomes for the US to pressure Iran without opening a much bigger problem. What started as a regional conflict is slowly turning into something global. It was always global, and that was always the point. And Hormuz is right in the center of it all. So I'm not being hyperbolic or scaremonger or any of the things that people want to say. This is what it is, right? And now we're seeing this with China. Everything seems to be done to escalate this. So far, there's no way to come back from it. And at this point, I don't see how the world will come back from it. But again, how do you get a one world government? How do you depopulate the earth? Well, you starve the world of the necessary and critical infrastructure that it needs: gas, oil, medication, food, fertilizer, like anything you can think of. Like, I mean, even you know how many things are not just going to get expensive, like your tires, any plastics that we need for many things. Like, I mean, even cosmetics, toilet cleaner, everything you can think of is going to be impacted on top of food and the prices. Have you seen how expensive food is? And gas is just getting started. Like I said, we will be nostalgic for the days it was $4 and $5, but The Bible always predicted this. The Bible always said this exact thing would be happening. But how do you get this one world government? How do you get the beast system, everyone under the beast system? How do you get 2030 that there'll be no jobs, that and already AI is taking over many jobs? How do you get to 2030 that you will that work will be optional, that we'll have universal high income, that everyone will have a neural link because there'll be no more cell phones? They are said that they are summoning the demons with AI. All of that is still going on in digital ID. Now you combine that with the energy lockdowns that are coming here. They're already rolling out. Have you seen what's happening in Ireland and all throughout Asia? It's insanity. But that is the point. That is the point. They have this date in their mind of 2030, 2030, 2030. But it doesn't happen magically at 2030. You have to get to that place. This is all leading up to that. And what did Jesus say? When you see these things begin, as well as the signs in the sun, moon, and stars, which we've been covering, when you see these things begin, know that he is returning on the cloud, harpazo, for the rapture, and then the 7-year tribulation. They've all even said they're preparing for Armageddon. The AI technocrats, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all of them. You don't have to believe it. But what do I always say? They all do, and they say it out loud. If you pay attention, it's everywhere. So yeah, we got to keep getting the word out, wake people up, open their eyes, because the world is going to look for an answer, and it's going to be a many who come to deceive. That's what Jesus said. So one of the ways you can help support the work, of course, is through realmelanieking.com. Lots of different merch here, Christian collection, my Yahweh, my conspiracy theory maps, my New World Order maps, seeing how they brought all this collapse about. I'll just show you this. This is the women's version of it. I've shown it many times. Gold-backed currency, the Bill Gates, the WHO, FDA, CDC, NIH, China, guys, the pharmaceutical companies, AIDS. Like, we are really digging in on this. This is really digging in. So that's on the front, and on the back. Believe your eyes, not their lies. Many different colors, but I also have it for men. I have it as posters. And it's a great way to kind of map it out and see it all if you have not been paying attention or you didn't know about it. Now, another way that you can support this work, help me fight back against censorship, is by donating. And I have the link to that directly that will be below, as well as other ways that you can support, including realmelanieking.com. But yeah, guys, buckle up, get ready. This is the time that we're living in, and we are in the last days. But be of good cheer. Be of good cheer, because our Savior, our help is 100% coming. So I will see you guys in the next one.